Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that can shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 44-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Kathy, 52-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum. And change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present. Hello, Kathy, how are you?
I'm great for, I guess, really, it's late night.
Yes.
We're getting ready to record. I'm so excited. We're recording with someone coming all the way to us from London. It's
the UK, my hometown, my home
your
country,
motherland.
the motherland. It's super exciting. And she is someone I've wanted to talk to for a long time. I've written a story about her and her great work. Her name is Jacynth Bassett. She's an award-winning, highly sought-after consultant and expert in the anti-ageism, age-inclusive and positive movement. At only 31, she is widely recognized as a leading pioneer and voice, awarded anti-ageist activist of 2023 at the Advantages of Age Awards, and named one of Evening Standard's 22 Londoners changing the world. And she definitely is. She's pretty fantastic. She is the founder and CEO of award-winning global campaign consultancy and community Ageism is Never in Style, and of The Bias Cut, the first age-inclusive independent fashion online boutique. Through her advocacy and entrepreneurship, she has become one of the most exciting visionaries and disruptors, leading the way for social change around aging. We can't wait to talk to her. Welcome, Jacynth.
We're coming to you from Australia and you're coming to us. Just tell us where you are.
So I'm in London. I'm in southeast London in Greenwich. Well, it's Greenwich. I'm on the cusp of Greenwich and a place called Deptford, which is becoming pretty trendy. So when I want to sound fancy, I sound from Greenwich, and when I want to sound cool, I sound from Deptford. But basically, I'm on the cusp of the both. But southeast London.
Oh,
Love
wow. So it's nighttime here in Australia and it's morning in the UK. So it's taken a little bit of logistics to get this happening, but it's very exciting and we're really excited to bring this chat to you. Jacynth, you were inspired to create a fashion label called The Bias Cut after feeling really frustrated that women of your mum's age were really invisible in those big clothing brands. Can you just tell us how you got started in that, world of fashion?
Yeah, sure. So I was a bit of an unusual trajectory, I guess. So I actually studied law at university, and I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And whilst I was studying law, I realized, as much as I found it interesting, it wasn't really something I was fully passionate about. I did a lot of work experience, and I remember thinking, as much as I find this interesting, somebody who I have a lot of anxiety and I'm quite a stressed person. And I thought, I'm going to be anxious and stressed about whatever I do. It might as well be about something I really enjoy. And
Smart.
and I realized just law wasn't really fulfilling me in that way. So I decided I wanted to become I was actually president of my university's law society, which was run almost a bit like a business, and that was kind of what showed me I was more interested in entrepreneurship. And having realized I needed to do something I was actually interested in, I thought, okay, where would I start if I went into business? And I thought, well, fashion is something that I've loved. I had I have a much more detailed understanding of the industry now, but I think even for, the average person, I had a pretty good understanding of the industry. It was kind of a passion that I used to go to lectures and do lots of reading about and things like that. And I quickly was thinking about, but it's an incredibly saturated market, and also I wanted to, there's a lot of positives and there's a lot of negatives to fashion. We know how much fashion has shaped, for better or worse, our ideals of what's, beauty standards, and it can be very exclusive. And I wanted to, if I was going to go into fashion, I wanted to do something that had a positive value to it.
Mm.
So actually my mind just, it was late one night, it was really one of those light bulb moments where I was studying for my exams in my second year at uni, and I couldn't sleep. My ex, who I was with at the time, was snoring,
Ah.
and yeah, and I can't stand snorers, and so I went to the bathroom just to get away from it, and I was literally just sitting there thinking about, my mind was drifting. I think it was genuinely like 2 a.m. And I started thinking about my mum. And my mum and I have a very close relationship. She loves fashion and style, always has wanted to, just look good and be her best version of herself. And she finds, she'd always instilled in me an appreciation of quality as well, and you know, fashion and style being a form of self-expression rather than just like
Mm.
following trends. It's
Yeah.
all about, it's very personal.
Mm.
And yet she had me at the age of 40. So from my teens, we'd go on shopping trips together. And so she would have been in her 50s at this stage. And I just started, I think at the beginning, quite subconsciously noticing how she was not finding clothes that she wanted to wear or feel good, or there'd be shopping assistants who'd be quite, quite judgmental or sneering,
Mm.
sometimes more overtly than others. Sometimes
Yeah.
it would be kind of subtle, others actually would be like, that's, that's not age appropriate, or you can't wear that at your age, or that's not. And so that was kind of something I was becoming more and more aware of through my teens. And then when I was thinking about her that late night or early morning, whatever, 2 a.m., I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about how much she was just being alienated by fashion brands because of her age largely, and a big part of
Mm.
that being her figure as well. So we know our bodies change with age. Naturally,
Sure
women's
do.
bodies
Hmm.
generally do, and particularly if you had children, you've had menopause, if you've had a sedentary desk job, things like that, your body can change, and it's very common. And it was just, she wanted to look stylish and modern, but she just couldn't find clothes that were either flattering but also fabulous and colorful and prints, or they weren't for her figure, but they were
Mm.
just a bit frumpy and dowdy. So that was really where it all started. I just realized that there was this need to disrupt this idea around what women can and what wear, and how much it was an underserved space. I finished my degree. I did about a year and a half, 2 years really, maybe, of research. I did a huge amount of market research, studies, survey, spoke to loads of different people. One instance that always stands out was I went to an event by one of the biggest fashion magazines in the world, and it was a public event. And the majority of people there, though, were younger.
Mm.
But I was in the queue for like I don't know, like a makeup thing. And a lady said to me, I just started chatting to this lady who said, I'm nearly 60, and I've come here because I love fashion and style. And a member of staff has come up to me and said, what are you doing here? This isn't for you.
Oh gosh,
And
so
so,
awful.
these
Mm.
it was just such a horrible,
Yeah.
I think it just perfectly encapsulates what so many women go through.
Hmm.
So, that was it really. And 8 years ago, well, I started a blog in 2015 called The Bias Cut, as a way to build a conversation and to get this. I was very conscious also, and I'm sure we'll come on to it as I know often comes up. I am younger than most people working in this space and around age, so I was very conscious. I didn't want anyone's, I didn't want it to be like a sense of almost I'm telling people what they should and shouldn't wear. It wasn't about
Hmm.
that. It was about, supporting women. So I started this blog, and it really built a following. And it was quite interesting actually how many women said they really liked the fact that I was younger and had been inspired by my mum.
Yeah,
And
I
so
do.
that was
Mm.
actually a real
Mm.
positive,
Mm.
because I thought it could be seen as a negative. And then, about, 2016, March 2016, so nearly 8 years ago, I just basically I did a bit of legal work to raise funds, just very small startup funds, and, launched the Bias Cut completely on my own. I did everything, the branding, the website building, sourcing, everything. I think the only thing I didn't do was take a couple of pictures of our models, but other than that, it was pretty much all me. And then, yeah, 8 years later, it just grew organically, and it's just grown.
Oh, how
Gosh,
fabulous. It's just,
yeah, it's a great story
yeah, I love
of,
it.
yeah, mix of passion and but also interest, and I love that your mum's was what your primary source of
Yeah,
inspiration. I think it's think that's just awesome.
And you know what's funny? People say to her, "Are you?" Because so my parents are both lawyers.
Mm.
That's not why I wanted to be a lawyer, although maybe again subconsciously I got
Yeah, yeah.
inspired. But people say to them, my mum, "Are you disappointed?" Well, they don't really say it anymore, but they did at the beginning. Go, "Are you disappointed Jacynth didn't become a lawyer?" And she goes, "Are you kidding me? I get amazing clothes." Like the problem is, she now complains she has too many clothes. So once upon a time she didn't have enough clothes, and now she's like, "I've got too many things." And the thing is that we have to, we wear this so much from the bias cut. And then my future mother-in-law also is a huge supporter and has modeled for us. And so we're literally, when the three of us go out, we have to coordinate what we're wearing, because between the three of us, we're like, we're going to look like a girl band otherwise.
The
I feel like
greatest girl
there's
band.
a market for you to expand into Australia, and Laura and I can be
We
models for
do
you
have
one
Oh,
day.
Australian
love that.
customers. We actually do have quite a lot of Australian customers, actually, but obviously,
Fantastic.
obviously the northern summer, the weather thing. So when
Yes.
we're bringing out our winter collections, it's summer for you, but it is definitely a market that we've got some amazing customers in.
Yeah.
Amazing. Just on the process of designing clothes, how
Mm.
are you involved in that as well? You talked a lot about the business side of things. Are you there coming up with the patterns, sourcing the fabrics? What happens in that side of things?
So we're multi-label, so we sell the different independent designer brands. So with them, that's that's a buying process. So it's a
Yes.
curation going through their collections,
Yep.
and something that we're very known for is understanding body shape.
Hmm.
So we take a great deal of time understanding what's flattering, really, and we have an incredibly low return rate. It's about 10%, which is really low for online. And I think that comes down to
Amazing.
the fact that we do actually understand body shapes. And sometimes we do get customers who go, "Oh, how come you didn't just pick that piece by that designer?" And I say, "Oh, trust me, it doesn't work." And then
Mm.
they've actually occasionally gone off and bought it from elsewhere and then come back and gone, "Yeah, I should have listened to you on that one." Um, but also we have two in-house labels. So,
Mm.
and these are the ones that then I am more involved in terms of the actual design process. So I
Mm.
have Jacynth London, which is my knitwear label.
Mhm.
And that is, I designed that all myself. And I then, I had
Amazing.
somebody to help me with the sketch. Well, I did all the sketching, but then you need somebody to help you with the technical packagings and things like that. But we did all the
Yep.
sourcing and manufacturing and things like that. So that was all. That's all. I do all of that. And then the other label, which is our Ageism is Never in Style label, which is more kind of t-shirts and branding and badges and things like that. Again, I do all the sourcing, and then work sometimes with some of our some of our British labels to help. We've done collections under that brand where we've collaborated with the designers,
Mhm.
so
Mm.
we've kind of co-designed pieces together.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm very integrated in the entire process. And I also, even in the cases where with the designers themselves, we're buying in, I'll always, be very much feedback. One of the things I do find quite frustrating is so often is things like putting like a sleeve on something. So many of our customers want sleeves. It's not
Yep.
necessarily the case that everyone does. And we have a filters on our website where you can shop by your body shape and areas you want to cover or hide. So for example, if you want to cover your arms, you can find the stuff that, or equally there are women who don't want to cover their arms. But it is frustrating when I find there are some things where you're just like, if you just put a sleeve on that, it will become so much more commercial and open up more and more people to buying it. And actually, this is all I talk about this because I also give lectures and talks on the topic of not, alienating consumers and bringing in different ages. It's like a 20-year-old's not going to suddenly not want to wear a dress because it's got a sleeve on it.
Mm.
So it's almost bizarre sometimes that they won't cater to these different body shapes because,
Mm.
actually I get so many people say to me, because one of my rules is if I wouldn't want to wear it at my age, why would somebody older have to wear it? I
Mm.
should never be
Mhm.
second best. Now, again, my figures might be different, but it's about the aesthetic. It should
Mm.
never be second best. And when in the first few years of the business, and, I'm sure my friends will admit their own biases were at play here because of what it was all about championing age inclusivity with a particular emphasis on championing women as they get older. Some of my friends clearly hadn't really looked at the bias cut because I'd go out in our stuff and they'd go, "Oh, I love that. Where's that from?" And I say, "My
Mhm.
business."
Yeah.
And they would be almost shocked
Mm,
that they liked the clothes, knowing that the business was around championing aging, because
mm.
of this subconscious bias that essentially was suggesting if someone older wants to wear something, then someone younger wouldn't. And it's actually
Yeah.
completely, it's back to front.
It's so true, isn't it? And there isn't that bias there. And I think about myself growing up and the fact that, the high street in the UK, which is obviously slightly different to Australia, but
Yeah,
there were the shops that my mum would shop at, and there were the shops like Miss Selfridge or Topshop that the young people would shop at. And it was
right.
very, very
Divided.
divided. That's right. And I
Mhm.
think, and it has changed. I'm so glad that, women like you are changing it for the next generation so that, young people don't have to have that divided. You can, as an older woman as well, now that I am coming into my midlife, I want to wear stuff that's trendy and interesting and
Right.
cute. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I think my mum said it perfectly when I did an interview of her in the early days, and she said, "I've always loved style. Why would that suddenly disappear?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is that. It's not like you
Mm,
just you wake up suddenly and go, "Do you know what? I don't really care about looking good anymore."
mm,
I mean,
No.
yes, of course, people's lives change and priorities do change, but in terms of an actual if you have something you valued and you get pleasure from
yeah.
wearing nice things, and which is nothing wrong with that. Some people think that's very superficial, but again, if there's so many studies around the psychological benefits of wearing clothes that make you feel good, then why would that suddenly just disapparate? It wouldn't.
Mm,
And oftentimes it's not that, like you can find the pretty sequin dress or you can find
Mm,
the whatever. But as you were saying, our shape has changed.
mm,
right.
Your size hasn't necessarily changed. You're
Mm,
still wearing the same size,
right.
but the shape has changed. And
Exactly.
you can't wear the same size. And I find that a lot, that
Yeah.
I have to size up.
Mm,
My arms are slightly like they're larger than I would love, but they're perfectly fine. They're functional, they work, all of those things. But when you were talking about, having a sleeve on things, my biggest bugbear is that oftentimes they have a sleeve on an item of clothing that might be a size 14,
hmm.
but the sleeve is not for a
Big
size
enough.
14
mm.
Yes,
person. And then I
absolutely.
will pick up a size 10 top that has this ballooning sleeve, and you go, there is so much material here. But
Yeah.
how
I
does
mean,
the
I
size
think,
14 not fit, but the size 10 does?
yeah, I
Anyway.
mean, there's such a problem with patterns and sizing. I mean, because there's no universal size standard as well.
Ugh,
And
yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said around also educating. I mean, I'm very passionate about educating at all levels. And I think there
Mhm,
needs to be a lot more done at university and college levels in fashion, where they're taught more around diversity, and they're taught more
mhm,
around understanding different body shapes. And I think even from my own experiences with manufacturing, what you're also dealing with is sometimes when you're manufacturing in a different country, their sizing is very different to sizing of like, and we might just be talking, maybe they size things a lot smaller. And so you have
Mm,
to be able to scale things differently and understand that.
mhm,
We all know, even within the same brand, things kind of come up very differently. And it's something that needs to be worked on a lot more to, yeah, as I say, understand these body shapes and pattern cutting, and just and exactly as you say, understanding that, you can be a size, but that doesn't mean you're all the same shape.
yes.
mhm.
And so that rather than
Yeah,
treating everyone in uniform.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Espe
So true.
especially with menopause, you just shift your weight in different
Yeah, and
places
in
and
particular around your midriff,
yeah,
Mm,
that's
absolutely.
something that is very, very common. And I think that's one of the, I find as a particularly common body shape, and particularly through menopause, it says a lot that that's also the body shape that we find women struggle the most with in terms of finding clothes that work on them. My
Yeah.
mum is what you would call an apple shape, which is, she has a bit of a midriff, and that was very acute. I was very aware of that,
mm,
that she was, saying, and it's something that comes into then when we talk about tokenism and talk about representation in fashion from a visual side of things. As I often say in my talks, you can put a 56-year-old woman in a campaign or on the runway, but if she is still of a stereotypical model shape, that's still not catering to that consumer. I mean, it's great that
Mm.
there's that representation, but you can't say suddenly, here you go, we're now catering and aware of that consumer, because her body shape is not that similar to many other women of that shape. So she can wear that sequin dress with little tiny sleeves or strappy, and she'll feel great in it. But a lot of women don't want to wear that at that
Mm.
age. So it's still not catering to that consumer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like Nicole Kidman and Jennifer Aniston look great for women in
Right.
their 50s, but they're not representing the average woman,
Yeah.
and that, it's no disrespect to them, but
No,
you need
and
that
there's no
broader.
disrespect for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to see. It's one of the things that's been talked about a lot lately, particularly in the press here in the UK, is the use of celebrities, older celebrities in fashion campaigns. And
Mm.
it's
Mhm.
great. This, I mean, it's certainly progress. We didn't see it 10,
No.
well,
No. Yeah.
we saw occasionally, maybe back in 2015, but other than that, it is progress, and it's still moving things along in the
Mm.
space around aging and ageism and age inclusivity, but it's not really getting quite to the crux of the issue.
Mm.
And celebrities, what we certainly find is actually a lot of women as they get older also don't relate. They relate less and less to celebrities. So
Mm.
Yeah.
actually, is it really taking into account the older consumer, as some people argue, or is it actually still just sort of a marketing ploy
Mm.
that is partly actually to more look good, but actually get the columns, in the Daily Mail, and
Mm.
actually it's still targeting the youngest consumer more,
Mm.
rather than really trying to hone in on understanding and target and welcome in that
Mm.
slightly near the midlife plus consumer.
Yeah, that's right. Because the gap is so wide between,
Right.
when you're young and you're, slim, which is a lot of young people are if they're relatively healthy, they can probably relate, yes, as you say, closer to that celebrity
Yeah,
Kylie Jenner sort of level. The older you get,
exactly.
the more the wider the gap becomes, when
Yeah.
the less women of that age can relate to Nicole and Jennifer, etc. Well, you've just mentioned, well, you previously mentioned your Ageism is Never in Style campaign and label, which was also
Yep.
founded in 2016. Is that
It
right?
was, yes. So it was about 6 months after.
Yeah. The campaign hashtag I look my age, which was like a challenge, right? That women were taking photos and videos with the hashtag I look my age, and under the Ageism is Never in Style umbrella, and speaking the truth about how the
Mhm.
age over 50 and midlife really does look. I guess that went viral. It went mad. It went all over the world. Hundreds of thousands, even was it millions of
It had million, like we when things go viral, it's quite hard to count, but we managed to count up to 45 million
Oh my god.
Wow.
views.
Yeah, that's
But I
incredible.
think
Yeah,
that's what we managed to count. So
yeah.
I think
Could be
it could
more.
be a lot bigger than that. Yeah.
I mean, that's just incredible, and that has changed, I imagine, your life as much as your brand, has it? Just tell us about what's happened kind of since that
Yeah.
viral
So
campaign.
it's quite funny actually, because it hasn't. So I started Ageism as Never Style, as you say, in 2016, and
Mm,
it was originally under the bias cut. So it was
mm,
Ageism is Never Style by the bias cut,
mm,
and it was set up as a community and safe space to really, talk about aging and talk about challenges and ageism and age inclusivity, and just spark discussion and debate.
mm,
And it was originally focused on Facebook, and then we moved over to Instagram a few years later. In the last few years, in itself, it was starting to develop its sort of own distinctive voice. So we actually launched our first campaign in 2021 called Strike Out Ageism.
mm,
And that was with a charity in the UK called Wellbeing of Women, which is a women's health charity.
mm,
And that also included these products that we'd worked with designers to create. And the whole idea was about taking narratives and phrases or statements that might have an ageist, they have an ageist undertone, but they might seem complimentary, like saying, oh, you still got it. But we'd actually cross out the still. That was our first big campaign. Interestingly, it got a great response on social media, but it was a bit ahead of its time.
mm,
And we shared it again last year and it went viral. So it just shows actually how much, if we'd launched it more recently, it would have had almost as big, you could have had a bigger effect as I Look My Age. Then in the background, I was also being asked to do more public speaking and do a work with research projects with universities, with charities. And then last year, we partnered with a charity in the UK called Centre for Aging Better to create the first series of free editorial stock imagery of women over 50. So these are images that are free to download globally off Centre for Aging Better's website, and also Unsplash, the stock
Mhm.
imagery website. And it was all about improving representation. So that was kind of what inspired then our idea for hashtag I look my age. It did blow up in the sense that I could never have imagined. I mean, we went from, even ourselves on Instagram, I think we had around 8,000 followers, to now, within the space of, just about, well, it's about 6 months, we're now at 135,000 followers.
Wow.
So, it went pretty mental in a way that we always hoped, but never could, we couldn't anticipate. I think a big part of it, which we were very honored by, was how many influencers and people online took
Mm.
part. It
Mm.
wasn't celebrity, going back to the celebrity, it wasn't celebrity driven. And actually, some people have said to us they felt that that was a key part of it, was they felt they could take part because it wasn't all about the celebrities.
Mm.
Mhm.
And then there were individuals, like there's an amazing influencer in Australia called Louisa. She's her, I think it's her name is Silver Linings
Yes.
1970, I think
I
is, yeah.
love
So
her. Yeah.
she's amazing. She took part. She's
Mm.
been very supportive of us. She's taken part. We have done other social media campaigns before as well. We did one the year before called They Say We Say, and she took part in that as well. And so she was really amazing. It was wonderful seeing how many took part, because it was all organic. There was no
Mm.
budget with this. It wasn't paid for. Everyone who took part did it, off their own volition. But why I sort of say it's quite amusing is, so my mum and my partner both said to me, kind of from the get-go, this, ageism as an is going to be your big thing. And I was like, oh, I don't know, I would love that. But I think, because, to be honest, when I started 8 years ago, people just weren't really talking about ageism or
Mm.
aging
Mm.
nearly like they are now. And I faced an awful lot of resistance and lack of interest. I wasn't sure. And so they're kind of both now like, see, we told you so. So so that's why it's quite funny. But yeah, it's been amazing seeing the response and the viral. And I mean, it's just wonderful seeing people taking part in different languages
Mhm.
globally, all across the world. And it went on for months. Like,
Mm.
we didn't know it would go, obviously didn't know it was going to go viral at all, but then to have it literally, like, and then at one point, I think it was in August, so we launched it on the 13th of June, I think it was. I was also on a holiday when we launched it. Not a good time to launch a viral campaign. I did not get nearly as much of a break as I probably needed. But it was just too exciting. I was in Greece, just seeing my phone blow up.
Mm.
And then, like, in August, suddenly somebody shared it in France on LinkedIn, and it went
Wow.
viral in France. And then we got interviewed by Le Monde. It was just amazing. And it's just been wonderful seeing it just flourish and to grow. And now Ageism is Never Start, as of 2024, it's its own distinctive brand. So
Mm.
it's no longer by the bias cut. It is just Ageism is Never Style. And we're now a full consultancy as well, working with brands and
Wow.
organizations, charities, who want to be part of this amazing global movement
Mm.
around
Yeah.
changing the narrative around aging, and wanting to be pro-age and wanting to be age inclusive. So it's really just so exciting, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. I've already got ideas. People keep asking me, what's the next campaign? I've got
Mm.
ideas,
Oh, good.
they're in development at the moment. But yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful. And it's been incredibly encouraging also seeing how many people of different ages have really, joined. It's one of the things I find particularly heartening, is when we find women who are about to, going into midlife, joining, following us and going, I've been feeling worried about getting older. I've been feeling bad about things. And actually, this is exactly the community. This is the tribe that I needed.
Mm.
So that's really, really lovely. And this year, our real focus is bringing more and more ages into the conversation, because my view is, the younger you become more aware of these ageist biases, the better, in the sense
Mm.
that you can then re-internalize positive views around aging and address them in yourself. So that's something that we're really focusing on this year. I mean, we did a poll the other day where we asked our community, when did you start engaging with issues around aging and ageism and age inclusivity? And I think about 70% said 40 plus,
Mm.
but then 92% said they wish they had engaged when they were younger. And I think that just says a lot. So that's
Mm.
something that we're really focusing on this year in a public way, is just making sure more and more people feel that they can become part of this conversation. Because when we talk about ageism as well, a lot of people think ageism means prejudice towards older people, but it
Yeah.
actually is any form of prejudice on the basis of age. Full
Mhm.
stop. You can experience just as much ageism when you're younger as you can when you're older. Now, yes, typically people experience it more with age because as they get older, because of our youth centric ideals. But particularly, talking about these generational divides, there's a lot of ageist biases that younger people experience as well. So that's something that
Mm.
we really want to be working on, is bringing them into the conversation as well, so
Mm.
that it becomes a more of a united discussion around the overall experience of aging, which we are all going through every
That's
single
right.
second of every day. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just been amazing.
It's
It
really interesting that you were saying, that a lot of people started to engage, 40 plus.
Mm,
And I wonder if it's that they start to engage when they start to feel that bias happening towards
I
them.
think that's
But
exactly what it is.
before it's happening to you, like, you're actually part of the bias yourself.
Right,
And
right.
then all of a sudden, you'll walk into a shop, you'll be overlooked by a shop assistant, you'll be standing at the counter, and they'll serve the young person behind you,
Mm.
or, something like that. And all of a sudden, it's like, hang on, that's happening to me.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
never thought that would happen to me. I never thought I would be that person, but it
Mm.
happens in the blink of an eye. But as you say, we need to be engaging with it much earlier than that so that we can make a change
Yeah,
before it's happening.
exactly. I did an interview with an actress, a brilliant actress here in the UK called Judy Graham. She's been on things like Doctor Who, Bletchley Circle. She's fantastic, and she's in her 50s, but she's been quite the advocate for around age and ageism in the entertainment industry for longer than, again. I mean, now we see a lot of actresses talking about ageism, but she's been talking about it for a long time. And in the interview, she herself said, I love seeing younger female actors, being successful. I love it, but we need them to also be talking about ageism and aging,
Mm.
because it's going to happen to them too, and they
Mhm.
need to be using their platform. And also, if they're producing a film, they're to look around and go, why are there not that many older women here, for
Mm.
example?
Yeah.
Why are there fewer actors, why is there fewer people in the crew? And using their platform and using their space to actually be an ally and speak
Mhm.
out and help support. Because I mean, it's an interesting one with allyship, because, as I say, ageism can affect all ages. So in some respects, I'm not an ally in what I do, because I'm also aging, so I'm also
Mhm.
within it. But I also am an ally in that I'm also an ally to women who are older. So
Mm.
it's kind of I have a dual kind of role and
Yeah.
responsibility. When people say to me, "Why do you care about aging? You're too young to care." I just sort of go, "Well, would you say to a man he shouldn't care about women's issues? No,
Mm.
we need
Mm.
men to be allies. Would you say to somebody who identifies as heterosexual to not care about LGBTQAI plus issues? No. So why is this any different?
Mm.
Mhm.
We should all be wanting to be a part of social, positive social change. And
Mm.
whether you are personally a victim of ageism or whether you're not, I mean, ageism really is the only ism that every single person can experience. But even if you're not personally experiencing it right now, you might do in the future. And why wouldn't you want to be a part of trying to change that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was thinking when you were talking then about how it's something slightly different, but for women in their 30s, I experienced the kind of similar sorts of ageism around having kids, and being
Right.
asked in an
And
interview.
that's very common.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, women, one of the things that we're quite focused on with ageism is Nera and Star is looking at
Mm.
women's issues. So we are very much, we welcome men to the conversation, absolutely. But we are quite a women's issues driven platform and
Mm.
community, because women are really never the right age. In her
Yeah.
20s, a woman's often like in the workplace, for example, a woman is often considered juvenile or inexperienced in a way that often male peers aren't.
Yes.
Then in her 30s,
Yep.
like you say, you might
Gonna have
be
a baby.
you're
Yeah.
gonna have a
No,
baby, go on maternity
don't
leave, get
promote
married.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
Gosh.
She
exactly.
might be off for a year.
Because
Yeah.
she's going to be off. And then 40s, it's premenopausal, 50s, menopausal, 60s, irrelevant. So actually, there really is no right age almost
Mm.
to be a woman.
Mm.
And
So
and
true.
men don't experience that in the same way. So that's why we do look at that. And actually, I feel aging would also really should become more of a conversation in the overall feminist movement as well, because it is this intersectionality. The word we give it is gendered ageism. It's something that really, the more that we can get again younger women understanding that they can, that it's their path, sadly, that they might be going on, but also, how they can help and support and be a part of this positive change, the better. And so, I go into schools and talk to even, students as young as 11 on it. And so they can really, and it's actually very encouraging seeing how engaged they are, which is really great, because, it's actually, and when I was giving a talk last year to some students, it's funny with you saying about 30s, because some of the teachers came up to me afterwards and going, "Oh yeah, I'm like 32 and I've noticed that." So it's just getting more and more people to engage at all ages. And as I say, men absolutely we want them to be in the movement. But I do think the ageism movement as a whole is being driven more by women. We're definitely seeing that. I
Yeah.
think Ashton Applewhite, she's a real inspiration of mine. She's a fantastic activist and in the ageism space. The way she puts it is the stakes are higher for women, which is why women are generally moving this conversation and the dialogue further forward. And with going back to hashtag I look my age, again, we very much, men could take part, but it was particularly women who felt empowered by it and wanted to take part. And I think that was particularly telling.
I
Yeah.
found so many great people to follow through
Oh,
your
good.
Instagram.
Yes,
Yeah, because
actually, we
it's
get
such
that
a
a lot.
positive
People say how
community.
much they found people. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love, and it really is a community. It really is. I find that the term sisterhood a bit cheesy, but it really is a sisterhood in the sense that it is incredibly supportive, and it is an empowering space. And I feel very much, as a woman at 31, more optimistic about my future too. From
Good.
from a
Yeah.
very personal position, and what's lovely is my friends. I've got friends of all ages as a result. I really do have some of my closest friends are 20, 30 years older than me, but also when I talk to friends my age, they've said, you've actually made me feel more optimistic. These awful 30 under 30 lists, which
Oh
basically tell
God. Yeah.
women you've got, well, women and men, but basically tell you if you don't succeed by 30, you're a failure. And so many of my friends around my age have sort of said, I felt really bad about turning 30, but actually you've made me feel better. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, we're going to live, people are living to the 8 to 90s, 100s now, and we're told from 30, it's all downhill from 30. I mean,
Yeah, it's insane. And I think the further away you get from 30, even 40, I'm looking back and going, it's young. It's amazing.
young,
You've got so much
young.
time. It's not a thing. But I remember being 30 and panicking, and that was mostly
Right,
around, the biological clock. And as you say, the pressures to,
right.
it's tricky. But on that subject, you are soon to be married to your boyfriend
I
of 10
am.
years. So congratulations
Yes,
to you.
thank you.
That is a big change. Are there any other changes you would like to make in your life, sort of personally?
Yes, I really want a dog and a cat.
Oh,
Aw.
I thought you were about to say you wanted a baby or
Yeah.
something.
No,
No, no.
no, I'd say
Fur babies.
I don't at, present see children necessarily in my future.
Yeah.
What's funny is I really didn't think I was an animal, much like a pet person. Not, I mean, I liked animals as much as anyone, but I wasn't obsessed. And during COVID, during the first lockdown, my boyfriend and I got locked down in the countryside in Oxfordshire with his mum and stepdad. We literally went to visit for Mother's Day and lockdown was imposed.
Oh
So
my
we ended up
gosh.
living
You're
there
stuck.
for 5 months.
Ah.
And as somebody who has grown up in Southeast London, you know, living in the countryside was a big change for me. And it was such it was such a therapeutic experience. And I actually, we go back there, it's like my second home now. We go back there every, you know, at least once a month. They have this beautiful cottage in the countryside. I don't think I want to change to the extent that I want to live in the countryside. I think I still am probably, I think I am a city
Small
girl at
dog.
heart.
Mm.
Yeah, but
Mm.
they had a dog and two cats.
Mm.
And so I became their second mum effectively, because I became obsessed with them. Sadly, Lily, their dog, has since passed away.
Aw.
Oh.
But she was 15 and a half. She lived to a very good age.
Mm.
But I'm literally constantly like, when are you getting a new dog? Because I need a dog. And then their cats have become, particularly one of them is sort of Dave, my partner's cat, and then the other one's my little cat.
Aw.
He's a little black cat called Moscow, who thinks he's a little panther. He's hilarious. But unfortunately, under my lease in London, I can't have pets.
Ah.
So the change I need in my life is to move and get a pet. That is
Yes.
what I'm literally like, my heart needs it. And I think probably a cat first and then a dog, but I want both.
Yeah. A
But I
cat's the
never thought,
gateway
I
animal.
think it's a gateway. And like I
Oh.
said, I never grew up
Mm.
with pets, so it was a completely new experience for me. I think my parents were quite shocked suddenly discovering I'm obsessed with pets. I think even you know, it was almost a surprise in myself. But I am now that person whose Instagram, it's just filled with cats and dogs, and everything is just that. So that is kind of the big change that I'm looking for in my life. But also, you know, professionally, we've talked about, you know, my career with going into ageism, but personally, I mean, I don't actually see getting married as that big a change in some respects. We've been
Yeah,
together
fair
10
enough.
years.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where we weren't going to get married. And then it became a question of rather than why get married, it was why not get married. And
Mm.
so we just thought 10 years, we'll have a party. Let's just make it a wedding. I realized over Christmas, so many people got engaged or pregnant. And I had actually we have booked got the date, but I just hadn't told anyone. So everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I think we're gonna have our wedding." I was like, "Oh no, I better tell everyone." So I like quickly was sending out the save the dates really quickly. But so I'm probably the one of the most kind of chilled brides there is. But in terms of like, oh yeah, guys, I forgot to tell you, it's
Getting married.
it's when we're getting married, and I don't have a ring, and we don't say we're engaged. We jokingly say we're betrothed. So you know,
Great.
it's to me really the change all I need in my life is a pet. Yeah.
A pet
I'm
and a
trying to
new home.
convince
Yeah.
a new home so I think I'll stay in
Yes.
London, but I'm trying to convince the family to, if there's a way we can train the cats to be like the ring cats or something.
I
I
think
don't think it's gonna
I'm
work.
not sure. Maybe a dog.
I'm not
No,
sure.
I feel like
So that's why they
I
need to
feel
get a
like
Cat's
dog.
just gonna
cats do
run.
what they like, right?
Yeah. And
Exactly. They'll
just
do what they like. I just don't think that's gonna work. So
no
I'm like, they need to get a dog, and then, but the thing is, they
ring
also know
bearer.
if they get yeah, exactly. But that's the main change.
I love it. Jacinth, we've kept you, you know, for a longer than we probably
Oh, I'm sorry. I
anticipated. So
have
thank
such a
you.
tendency to speak too much, so I
Not at all.
Oh,
apologize.
You've got so much
I'm
good stuff to
loving
say. Yeah.
every
I
minute of
know. I'm making
your
notes and everything. But
yeah.
we just always end by asking our guests how they feel about the change, aka the menopause. And we want to know, what is your relationship to it? Have you spoken to your mum about it? And, you know, have you got any thoughts about how it's going to affect your future and how you want to kind of approach it?
Yeah, so interesting. I have spoken to my mum about it, but I think she went through menopause a bit late. She was sort of in her mid-50s,
Mm,
Mhm.
and actually she feels that she didn't have the worst experience with it.
great.
Which is great.
So
Mm,
which is great, and I know a lot of women do, but it hasn't really been a huge conversation in that sense. But what I do feel is because of my work, I have gone to an awful lot of conferences and panels and things like that around menopause, which I am so grateful for, because I have learned so much.
mm,
Mhm.
And, you know, I am often the youngest person there by quite amount. And, you know, I've learned to do my Kegel exercises.
mm,
I've learned, you know, understanding more about perimenopause. So I feel a lot more optimistic in the sense that I feel
Mm.
educated. And I do, one of the things
mm,
that, again, I've talked before about, and I really wish schools would do is, you know, they're taught certainly I don't know in Australia, but I know here in the UK with women, they're taught up to sort of pregnancy and then it just stopped. They're not
Mm.
taught about menopause,
No,
and
it's
I really
bizarre.
feel like they need to be teaching about that
Mm.
because it's such a as I said, I've learned so much, and when I've gone to talks, people have said, even I remember a GP even saying, I used to recommend or prescribe surgery to my patients, and actually, it wasn't until I went through menopause I realized I was giving the wrong
Mm.
advice. And
Mm.
that's a perfect example of where, how much we need to be educated on it. So I feel more positive. What I do think needs to, where I hope we're going to move to, is a more overall positive narrative around the change, in that it's the next step of life.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
there was a study that
Normal.
was done, and yeah, and there was a study that was done which actually is that more women consider menopause a taboo now than they did 2 years ago.
Mm.
And it's
Mm.
because even though it's being talked about more, it's being talked about in a very negative way,
Mm.
Okay.
all about how, all the symptoms you're going to get that's going to ruin your life and you're going to feel dreadful and things like that. So more women are fearful of it than they were almost when they were just ignorant of what it was going to mean
Wow.
for them. So that's where I think I'm hopeful things will change a bit more. In
Mm.
that, yes, don't get me wrong, we need to be very much aware of these symptoms. As in the UK, we say there's 48 symptoms of menopause, so it's very
Wow.
important. Yeah, that's a lot. Exactly.
Mm.
And that can make people very scared. And we need to be aware of that. And workplaces, for example, then
Mhm.
need to be more aware of that. And things and companies and society as a whole needs to just realize it's part of normal. Every woman's going to go through it. Well, pretty much nearly every woman's going to go through it. So I do think that we need to be aware of those negatives, but also look at it as a new phase of life for a
Mhm.
lot of women. So but overall, I genuinely feel grateful for the work that I do, and with how much it's educating me on what menopause, when I presumably will go through menopause. So I feel quite prepared in a way that
Mm.
I hope more and more women become prepared. I don't see it as I mean, if I, like, who knows, maybe I will get all those difficult symptoms, but I don't. I feel there's a lot out there now that can support and can help. So overall, I feel quite optimistic about it.
Which I think is
Exciting.
great. And yes, and we've been referring it as our third act or our
That's the thing, it's just
yeah,
another
Mm.
phase,
it's
and
another
I say
phase.
there's
Yeah.
another phase in life, and I'm grateful that it's been talked about. Say, even though some people do feel it's been talked about in a particularly negative way, again, it's the conversation's out there, and I
Mm.
can only imagine, I'm 31, so say I go through menopause in about 20 years. I mean, I'll go through perimenopause in about 10 years, 10, 15 years, and then let's say, statistically I go through it in about 20 years. I can only imagine where we'll have come along by then.
Mm.
It's going to be, but I do want to educate more of my friends on it and get them to be more aware of it, and students about it, because
Mm.
it's just a natural part of life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I
Mm.
think the awareness is key because
Mm.
there's so many health issues that are
Mm.
potential negatives, like big
Yeah,
negatives, bone density, heart, brain, all of
yeah.
those things that being aware and knowing about it early,
Hmm.
younger, you can take preventative steps
Right.
so that those things don't happen
Mm.
or they're
It lessens.
minimized,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so therefore they're not negatives, they're not big health issues
It's
that
just
they
hope,
might
exactly.
be.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think, so I speak to women who've said, I know there's a big debate over HRT, but
Mm.
some have
Mhm.
said, those who have said that it did make a big difference for them. They said,
Oh,
I
I wouldn't
genuinely,
be
before I
without
took
it.
it, yeah,
Mm.
and they've said to me, honestly, I thought one person said, I genuinely thought I was going through early onset Alzheimer's,
Mm.
Mm.
and then I realized it was this, and I started taking it. It made a difference, and it's things like that. I
Mhm.
think when those changes, if they do happen to you, start happening, you're not hopefully going to have a massive freak out.
Yeah, you know what to
Instead,
ask
you know
for when
what
you
to
go to the
ask for
doctors.
when you go
Yeah.
to the doctor, and not just get me just described, being prescribed the wrong thing, because sadly the doctors aren't yet fully, particularly
Yeah.
educated on it. And
Mm.
again, I am generalizing there, but there's still a long way to go there. So I think, as you say, where awareness is key here.
Mm.
Yeah.
100%. Well, Jacynth, you are the most educated person. You're going to sail through peri and
Oh,
menopause,
I'm
I'm
going to
sure.
be very. I am going to be a bit over-educated. I mean, you can never be too educated, but who knows? Maybe when I'm 50, like 6 or something, I'll be like talking about something completely different. But I
That's right.
feel very very grateful for the space and the women around me, like yourselves, like the women we're talking about on social media, who just inspire me and give me
Yeah.
hope for the future.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm inspired by you. So thank you
And yeah, thank
so
you
much
so
for talking to
much.
us.
No,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Oh my God. I kind of almost wish that I was 30 again just so that I could age alongside of
I
Jacynth.
know. I was like, I just want you to come and live in my house and just talk to me all the time, and make me feel just amazing. But also, she's so articulate and had so much great stuff to say about aging. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. I wish I had her knowledge and expertise 20 years ago.
I know. I know. I was really taken by the part where she was talking about their viral campaign
That I
and
look my
how
age.
I know and how it went crazy and how she hadn't planned for that
Mm,
because she actually booked herself on a holiday. And I just thought it really struck me that sometimes the very best campaigns are the
mm,
ones that just happen organically and
mm.
you aren't expecting it. And look where it's taken her.
It's incredible. It's funny because that campaign is what led me to Jacynth in the first place. And
Mhm.
I did a story for Mamma Mia about that particular campaign and reached out to her on Instagram. And I couldn't believe it when I found out she was only 31. I was like, what? But it all makes sense, doesn't it? When you speak to her and you hear about how
Absolutely.
the story with her mum. I thought, what a fabulous story, and what a great daughter she is to have
Yeah,
kind of done all that based on wanting to help her mum out. And now her mum gets all these free, amazing clothes. So
I
it's just
know.
a win-win.
Maybe one day I'll have fabulous daughters that will do that for me. I mean,
Yeah.
I have fabulous daughters now, but
Maybe one will go into fashion just for you, Kathy.
I know,
Mm.
and just so I can get free clothes.
We can but dream. But yeah, she was a great guest, and
Ah,
that was a really great chat. And we
it
hope
was.
you took something away from that. I feel like I need to go and think some more on it, and I think I'm going to be awake long into the night tonight, just pondering some of the things she had to say.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.